We're on.
We're on?
We're on.
All right, can't talk bad about the pastors now.
Nope.
All right. Hello, everyone, with this crowded room full of participants ready to be good small group members. Welcome to our last session on building better Bereans. It is a teacher trainer mini-series, but you don't have to be a teacher to participate, I promise. So let's jump into building better Bereans part 3, looking at small groups. And again, this is going to be relevant for you whether you are looking at doing facilitation in the near future, whether you're looking to integrate facilitation questions into your teaching, or if you're just looking to participate well and strategically in a small group. These will be some helpful things for you. So first of all, we're going to review our small group rules, which we usually do review at the beginning of each of our studies when we break into small groups that are sort of maintaining a regular rhythm. Because for those of you who are new, we do have some studies, like in the last couple of ones, where you're just like, okay, turn to the person next to you or grab a couple of people around you. But oftentimes what we'll do is we'll have a set group and you'll come and meet with that same group week to week throughout the course of that study. So 9 weeks, 14 weeks, whatever the case may be. So these groups can be fantastic places to develop relationships with other women and to engage with scripture really meaningfully. But there are some things that help that happen. Mom, what's the first way?
It's confidentiality. It's just like Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Stays at
What
Vegas.
happens in small groups stays in small groups.
Right, because there's nothing that's more discouraging and disheartening than if you share something at Bible study and you took the step, you were vulnerable and you shared something that's been on your heart, and then the next Sunday you hear about it from somebody who wasn't there and you're like,
yeah.
And even if it's not in like an aggressive way, or if it's just like something banal, that all of that trust is now broken. And so you're like, well, now I'm never sharing anything. I'm not sharing anything ever again. And so we don't want to do that.
No, because we want everyone to feel comfortable with sharing things and to really build relationships.
Right.
And make everybody feel that it's okay to share.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what's said here stays here. Now we do have a small group leader caveat. So if you end up sharing something like, I'm having fantasies about murdering my husband,
And I've bought the gun.
then we're gonna take that information and we're gonna take some extra steps with that. So if you're going through something really serious, if we're like, ooh, we're detecting signs of some abuse, or you're really going through like a serious addiction problem, then we'll connect you through and say, hey, we want to get you the help that you need, and we connect you with a pastor or with 911, depending on the circumstance. And this is a very, very rare circumstance, but that's our caveat or a little asterisk, that if somebody shares something that causes some serious concern, that's the time to break the confidentiality rule for the safety of the people who are involved. Mom, anything to add to that?
Well said.
Well said.
Yes.
Our next one is, will you read it so I can?
Focus. Because our lesson time is intended to highlight the main ideas, stories, whatever points of the lesson, and to get you ready for small group time.
And on the other hand then, so our small group time, and this is especially whenever we have those dedicated small groups, are designed to be opportunities to explore and target our application steps. So our first week we talked about those observation interpretation steps. The lesson time is intended to sort of work through that information. Small groups is intended to be now shifting the focus toward application, and again, cultivating those relationships, talking to one another about our lives, discussing what we think that the Spirit might be calling us to do, and then praying for one another.
Right. So, and I do want to say what Mariah has here. Please hear this with so much love.
So much love.
But listen, the offenders aren't here, so I can really just put this out there.
Dang.
Listen, if you start talking about your favorite cheesecake recipe, we might give you the bunny thingy. Or if you're monopolizing the conversation, like blah, 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 blah. We still love you, but we only have so much time. We want everybody to have a chance to share. So your group leaders may say something like,
Okay, let's bring it back. The question was...
Or thank you so much for sharing, Julie. Let's hear from someone else now.
Or, Mom, cheesecake recipes aren't really on topic. Let's save it for after our discussion time. And so the bulk of our small group time is designed to generate that fruitful discussion and reflection that leads to meaningful application. We don't want to just study the word, come and chat, and then be like, I just had such a nice conversation with everybody, and not walk away changed. And so we do encourage in our small group time that the ending is preserved for exchanging and praying. So,
Yeah.
Exchanging prayer requests and praying.
Each group leader is seeking to facilitate application-focused engagement and caring relationships. So we hope each of you will join them in that by trying to follow those rules.
Speaking of engagement, engagement is our third point, or sort of third rule. And we like to say is this is choose your own adventure, right? You get to choose your level of engagement, period. And that goes for everything that we provide with our Bible studies, right? So there's not a, I mean, we do take attendance, but it's not like you get points for attending. So for however many weeks, we don't, if we're using workbooks, we're not giving you extra credit if you have all the answers filled out. And we're not like tracking your participation in the small groups.
Correct.
But we would like to encourage you to participate. Mom.
Yes, to coming as regularly as your schedule allows, right? Because everyone has busy schedules.
Yep.
Doing the hike your own hikes if you're available to, if you can, because they really will help you grow.
Yep.
And participating vulnerably in the discussions.
Yep.
Go. That's a great one.
As I was reflecting on small group participation, I've heard some people say, oh, well, I just really love listening to everybody else's answers. Like, I don't feel the need to say anything. And that's great, and we're so glad you're here. But if we can replace you with an orange cone, now you might be benefiting, but the people who are coming alongside you are being deprived of the opportunity both to benefit from your wisdom and perhaps from the opportunity to come alongside you.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
but don't engage so much so that no one else has a chance to talk.
Yes.
Preaching to the choir here.
There is a balancing line, but that can be difficult to walk because we want. There are even seasons of life that we go through where sometimes we're more ready to participate, or we have more in our heart that we need to share, or we have more to give. And then there are some times where maybe we're just feeling more quiet. We just don't really feel like you have really anything to share on that particular topic, or maybe you walk in with a migraine and you're tired and you're just like, it's been a long week already and it's only Tuesday and I have 30 papers to grade and I've already graded 60 and I just want to sit here. And I'm sure you all can resonate with that kind of experience. It's nice to sort of keep that internal clock on yourself and to think, you're like, you know what, I didn't answer the last question, I didn't really have anything that was super relevant. I do have something for this one. I'm going to go ahead and share for this one. But again, to just sort of be thoughtful in your engagement because of that shared group goals. Now, we do encourage, especially for our evening groups, for each small group to start some kind of prayer group, whether it's through Signal. A lot of people have liked using Signal recently, text or email, whatever. I mean, if you want to use Telegram, if you want to use carrier pigeons or whatever you would like to use, but something that's outside of the study to sort of keep each other in the loop, update one another about prayer requests, we send new prayer requests, can be really, really awesome.
It is, because it's really encouraging to get a text from your small group leader, because you share, or from another person in your small group leader. Because you do share those requests, those prayer requests, and then you do end up getting these random texts from your friends, and you think, oh, she thought of me today.
Yeah. And again, that's just another opportunity that we have. It's not a requirement for you to, share things or to check up on people, but the more that we do engage, the more that we pour into one another, the more that we can bless and be blessed. And I know even my small group from the Genesis study is actually still going. So we're still sharing requests and praying for one another, which doesn't always happen. Like that doesn't always continue, but oftentimes I have found that the Lord just sort of pulls the right people together for the groups, and people encourage one another and build one another up, and it can be really, really powerful. And again, it's choose your own level of adventure, but we can say from our personal experience that the more you're able to engage with all of the different forms, the more opportunities that we will have to grow, both personally and in our relationships with the Lord and with one another. Mom, anything to add?
One of the things that I love about sharing too in the small group, just that you, so many times, I'll share something and someone else will say, oh, me too, and you're like, oh, I'm not alone. I thought I was the only one who put on bunny ears and jumped around the yard in the morning.
That actually happened just the other day at softball. I cannot reveal any names, but one person was sharing their faith experience, and then somebody else was talking about, I feel that's exactly my story. And the other guy was so his face just transformed. He's like, I felt so low. That's the first time I've ever heard somebody say that. And I was just like, oh, softball doing what softball does, man. I was like, only that moment better than the double win, man. So those kinds of moments can be so encouraging to the heart. And whenever, again, we share vulnerably, it does too give people the opportunity to come alongside, which can be hard, right? Especially if you're sort of used to being like, you know what, I'm tough. Like I can carry the load. Like it's okay. I don't want to burden somebody else with what's going on. But that's not how the body of Christ works. We want to come alongside one another. Yeah. The other thing that I do want to say about our small group time is funny because we will oftentimes end up crying, wiping away tears. And what I'll say is, I'm like, well, what better place to be doing so than our ladies' studies, where we're gathering together to encourage one another, to build one another up. Like, this is the time. This is the place. If we can't be vulnerable with one another here, well, where am I going to go? Like, where am I going to go? Like, it's not like this is the form that we're seeking to be able to build those relationships and to build into one another. Rolling forward. Whenever you are crafting questions to prepare for discussion. So if you're ever a teacher with one of our things, we'll oftentimes ask that you prepare either, us, we do the full workbooks, but even our rotation will prepare a handout that has some questions for our small group discussion. And so whenever you're creating questions, whether it's for Bible study or for something else, there are different kinds of questions that you can ask, and they align with our study method. So if you remember, again, observation, interpretation, and application, those are sort of the three categories of questions that you can ask in general. Now, whenever I'm doing the workbooks, I will usually save observation and interpretation kinds of questions or structures for again, you guys are familiar with the map it out sections. So I'm like, hey, this is the section where I want you to look at the text. Think about interpreting, think about making your observations. And then we have a separate section that's focused on application. I generally recommend, if you're creating handouts that people are doing when the lesson is finished, to keep them focused primarily on application, because if you have observation and interpretation questions that you're handing out for people to do after the lesson's over, then there's not an opportunity for anybody to give or receive feedback. And that can be, like, people don't like that sense of, well, I don't know, is this right? And if it's something that was covered in the lesson that's really kind of obvious, then people are like, oh, am I dumb? Like, did I miss it? Did I miss? Well, isn't the answer, John? Isn't this answer really obvious? And so I would encourage people to focus on application for small group conversation, generally speaking. Now, whenever you're in the realm of application, again, going back to our first lesson, we have those two sort of broad categories within application, general and specific. And I do encourage people to craft questions that are first thinking more general Christian application. So like, how can Christians apply this concept today? And then how can you apply this today, to sort of help funnel people down? That also allows, in the small group, for people to start sharing without having to immediately bare their soul. So you can give an answer, and it can even be close to what your answer is, like personally for yourself, but it might not be. So it gives people a chance to engage without needing to go straight to the heart. But then once you get into the specific, there are really two kinds of specific questions that you can put down. The one is reflection questions, so where you ask people, hey, go ahead and reflect on a time when you have seen God show up for you, or reflect on a time when you were victimized in a scenario. How did God carry you through that time? And these are good because it helps us to remember how God has operated in the past, and it can provide a launching point into the future. Now, the danger.
There's a couple.
What's one of them?
One is the stealing other people's pool.
What?
Which is, yeah,
Stealing
so
people's
if you
pool.
think about it, so if you have a pool, you just got your new pool, and you're getting up on the diving board, and you do this beautiful dive in, and then your pool is gone.
You're like, what?
It's just like if Jill is telling an awesome story about her past, something that happened. I'm like, oh, well,
That
whenever
reminds
I
me.
did that, you know, I blah, 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 and I totally like trump her story. And she's like, my pool is gone.
My pool is gone.
So try not to, Earl calls it the Me Tooing. So we
Yeah.
try not to Me Too.
Yep.
Yes, that's another good one-upping.
Yep.
Try to validate
talker.
the other person's story, talk
Yep.
about their person's story. Another problem is answering with a story when it's not a story question.
Right, because the other category of questions is applications for today. And so if we ask the question, so this week, what is one way you will share the gospel with somebody? And you answer with,
Last week, I saw my neighbor outside getting the mail, and I just felt like I had to go over and give him some of my bison soup.
I might say, let me pause you there. So, you know, that's a great example of how you shared last week. With that in mind, how do you think you can share the gospel this week? And so the other danger, of course, with reflection questions is that we can get sucked into the past and live in the past a little bit, whether in a positive or negative sense. So we can sort of rest on our laurels. And again, with sort of like with that answer, we can say, oh, well, last week, last year, 2 years ago, I did this awesome thing for Jesus. Look at me. And you're like, okay, well, let's take that and move the momentum forward. So I try whenever we create reflection questions to always have something that brings you out of the past into today, whether it's thinking about, well, how has that helped you change your perspective on who God is, or so this is how you went through that then, how can you handle such situations differently now, or whatever. The other thing, of course, is that we can end up having a pity party for ourselves and be like, if you ask, okay, so how are you victimized in the past? The danger of asking that question in a discussion time is that then you'll go down the pity party path, and then you're just sitting in the pity party pool looking down at your navel and going, woe is me, and we don't want to live in that space. There can be value in going into the past, but we don't want to stay there. We want to move out of the past into the present.
Yeah.
Anything else before we move into SMART?
Another problem that we might run into that I think this is the place to talk about
Sure.
it, but if not, you can cut it and put it somewhere else, is for me to say, you know, Julie, I really think that a way that you could apply this is to go talk to your neighbor today about his dogs.
And you know what, Mom, thanks so much for sharing that opinion, but I'm going to pause you because that's an opinion on how Julie could apply this. How can you apply this today? We will probably hit this a couple of times throughout, but we don't want to play the Holy Spirit in somebody else's life. So even though you might actually have a correct assessment of a way that somebody else could apply, that we don't want to play the Holy Spirit. So whenever a question is being asked, now again, this is crafting numbers, but that's a danger, is that people will redirect.
Smart question.
So let's talk about SMART questions. This is on your handout. It's the third page, second page, third page, whatever, of the active listening technique. So SMART questions, SMART goals is what's listed here. You can use the SMART goals to help shape questions. So specific, achievable, measurable, realistic, and time-bound. I like to try to create at least some questions that are SMART in our workbooks, because if you say, okay, well, how will you apply this to your life? And then your response is, well, I'm going to do my devotions more. Well, how do you know Like, how do you know if you're succeeding in that? How can others successfully come alongside you and encourage you? How will you know if you've made progress? And you're like, it's just so vague and ambiguous. And so if you say something like, okay, what is one way that you're going to share the gospel this week? Then it's time bound. It's limited to just specific. It's achievable and realistic, right? It's just one. It's not like 7. It's not like share the gospel every day and you're like, but I'm not even going out of the house today. Like, what am I? So it's, it's something that your brain can get your hands around it. And so think about creating some questions at least that line up with the SMART goals. Mom, anything to add before we move forward?
No.
Moving forward. Now, once you've created your questions and you are now in your small group time, this is probably one of the hardest things, realistically, is asking questions and waiting for answers. Now, obviously, part of what a small group facilitator does is they ask the questions. They have the list, and they're like, okay, I'm going to ask you the questions. And the way we do it here is we usually have more questions than we think people will answer in the course of a thing, and then the small group facilitator gets to pick the questions they want to ask. But I don't know about you guys. But I've had the experience where I ask a question and then there is the crickets. And you're looking around. And you're like,
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like probably somebody has an answer. And so we do have some strategies, some techniques for helping you as you wait for an answer. Mom, what's one of the strategies?
Yeah, one is to pick an ally. So I might say, Jill, I know that you've had an experience with this in the past. Would you mind, whenever we ask this question, because it is a tough one, would you mind answering first? And Jill, as I privately ask her that, can either say, sure, or I'm not answering that question.
Yep.
And if she says, I'm not answering that question, then I would move on to somebody else. But it's good to have somebody, because oftentimes, jumping on to the next one, I will try to answer the question first, especially if it's a hard one. But if every time I ask a question, I answer first, then that's also like me monopolizing the conversation.
Right.
So picking an ally is a good strategy.
It's a great strategy. I do like that you highlighted that it should be a private conversation, not, I mean, you can sometimes, because sometimes I know, like if Mom's in my small group, or if Steph Scholl is in my small group, I know that I can ask them to share something, and they will either have an answer that they want to share, or they will have the confidence and the security to say, no, I don't have anything. And they feel good about saying no. But you want to, generally speaking, if you have somebody in mind, it's strategic to ask them ahead of time.
Yeah.
Another strategy is only to ask one question at a time. Now, I struggle with this one because I like to sort of tag team questions, and I'll be like, okay, so these questions kind of go together. So I'm going to ask this question and this question, and you know what, this follow-up question too. I'm going to ask all 3 of these questions at once, and you can pick whichever variety of the combination of the answer works for you. Now, it's not wrong to do that. It's not like against a rule or anything, but most people can only think about the answer to one question at a time. So they're not going to, for the most part, I will try. I'm going to try to answer all of the questions, but because I'm like, well, they asked all of the questions, they want all of my answers. But if you end up answering 3 questions, you're going to end up talking for a long time, and most people sort of feel that. So they're probably just going to ask or answer one question, and then that's going to be the direction that the conversation takes. So you're going to end up realistically only going off of one question anyway. Or the next person is going to be like, well, I wanted to answer the first question, and they're going to take the conversation in a completely different direction, and then you're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. So again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I would recommend only picking one question at a time. So another strategy, if you are waiting for an answer, Mom,
is to rephrase the question, because sometimes the way that we, whoever ask the question is like, well,
I'm like, it made sense in my brain.
Made sense in my brain.
Made sense in my brain.
Yeah, people just give you the what?
Yep.
So just ask the question a different way. Same question, just a different phrasing of it.
Yep. And again, going back to sort of what we said earlier, it is okay to call on people and see if they have something. You guys know how we work. You guys know that if I ask you a question and you don't have something, you can say no. Always.
Yeah.
But some people are like, well, I don't need to share. Like, I don't need to share. And so they generally won't share until they're called on. And I'm like, well, I just don't feel like I have to share. Like, if other people want to share, they can share, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But again, we want to hear from everyone. We want to learn from one another. We want to encourage one another. So,
and I'll even sometimes say, like, it's okay if the answer is no, but do you have something to share?
Yep.
Just so they know it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
We don't, and again, we definitely don't want to make people feel like they have to answer, but we also want to give people the time and space to answer. And again, you guys know me, you know that I will ask a question and then wait for how many seconds? At least 20 to 30. 20 to 30. So I'll actually count silently in my head and wait. And I'll usually look around and I'll make eye contact and I'll look at people's body posture, which we'll talk about more in a second. But again, the more quiet a person is, the more apt we are to either think that they're not going to answer or to interrupt them mid-thought because their thoughts are still sort of processing. So we want to resist the temptation to jump in too soon. And again, and some people, their body language is more easy to spot, and then some people you just get to know, and you're like, I'm going to wait just a little bit longer because I don't think this person's quite done.
Yeah.
And sure enough, there they go. And you're like, I knew it. And then you're like, I think they're done. And then you're like, wait, just wait another couple. And then they keep going. And you're like, I knew it. I knew it. So, we want to wait. So, Mom, what are some ways that we want to respond whenever people are
Well,
talking?
are we on to the next thingy?
When you do respond.
When you do respond, empathize with the feelings the speaker is conveying. So that's one of the a lot of techniques that we have on that paper. So I might say something like, "Oh, so you think that you would like to do your quiet time earlier in the morning," which is basically just saying exactly what the person just said, just in a little bit different way. And oftentimes the person will actually take that as a cue to talk forward, which is fun. And of course, listening intently, looking at them, giving the nods.
Sometimes you may say something back to somebody and they're like, no, that's not at all what I meant. And then, but that gives them the opportunity to correct what you've said instead of you just sort of operating under the false understanding of what they've said.
Yeah.
So as we're empathizing with the feelings and doing that active listening, we now are going to move into body language. So this was my big selling point for today's lesson. So we are going to talk all about body language because now we actually looked up, we double checked our research. What do you guys think? How much of our communication, now this is a tricky delineation, so how much of our communication is the words that we say? Any guesses? There's only 2 of you.
I know.
Go ahead, Jill.
Start counting 30. No.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
We will cut this part out of the
Let's
video.
say,
Yeah, we'll cut it out.
I mean, what I would have thought would be like 90%.
Okay.
But I'd probably not.
Okay.
I think it's the opposite. Yeah. Well, now that.
You're like, I know, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's what? 7%? 7%.
Is the words. Wow.
7%.
Just the words.
So there is a percentage
38%
is
inflection, how you say it.
Oh.
And then
Forgot about that.
55% is completely nonverbal. So your body language is 55% of how you communicate. We're just gonna let that settle in for just a moment because you're like, what? So paying attention to people's body language and starting to be intentional both about looking at people and thinking about what your own body language is representing to one another in the group can be really, really helpful. So we're gonna go through a few different categories here. First, the I want to answer. So our very first one, Mom.
So
Leaning forward. It's on the board.
oh, I'm on the wrong slide. So whenever a person leans forward, that usually means
Opening their mouth or inhaling. So if you see somebody going like Like that's a cue that they have something and they're actually actively getting ready to say it. So, and you may see me doing this if somebody has been talking for a long time. I am working up the courage and energy to interrupt them. I'm like, so.
Another one is sitting up more, and really most gestures that people make, body movements, I guess, usually indicate, unless it's the sit back and cringing, that's usually the opposite.
Yeah.
But like sitting up more, sometimes they'll just shift position, shift towards the speaker. Any of those things are like working up my courage to say something now.
There are some people that I've noticed who their their neck and jaw will become a little bit straighter and just a little bit more tight, and and I'm like, and so it's not everybody, but the more you get to know people, the more you start to learn specific cues that people have. Now the last one has an asterisk. It is eye contact, because some people are just listening, and so they may just make eye contact because they're paying attention. And there are some people who make eye contact because they want to share.
Yep.
And so sometimes I'll call on people and they're like, oh no, I don't have anything. You're like, cool.
Yeah.
Something else, we don't have it up on the screen, but especially whenever we have the workbooks where people have looked at stuff ahead of time, if I'm looking around and I'm not reading what you have, but like if I happen to notice that there's text written underneath the answer that we're working on, I may say something like, hey, it looks like you may have thought about this question. Do you have anything that you would like to add? And you can always say no, but that is something that you can look, just sort of be aware of, is that if people have pre-thought about it, for me, as an introvert who likes to take my time and think about stuff ahead of time, I'm more likely to answer a question if I've already thought about it. Anything else on this slide, Mom?
No.
Next, so in response, so whenever people are talking, we want to be intentionally indicating with our body language that we are listening. So, Mom, what is the first way?
So again, just like whenever you want to answer a question, you lean forward.
Mm-hmm.
Showing that you're interested is by leaning forward, the mirroring posture, and I can't see where your arms are, so I can't do it very well.
But so if Mom was looking at me and I was doing this, Mom she might mirror my posture, right? Or if somebody's putting their hand on their face, I might move my hand up to mirror what they're doing.
Yep. But it really is a like subconscious thing that we do without even noticing.
Now,
to show that we're connected and listening and really trying to get.
I mean, even if you've ever seen somebody yawn, what do you automatically start doing? Even if you're not tired. Yeah, you yawn because we have mirroring neurons, and so our bodies are sort of programmed to mirror what other people are doing. Now, I will sometimes do this really intentionally. So if I'm in a circle with people and I notice that, again, one person's doing something, I will intentionally try to mirror because I'm really focused on trying to make sure that people feel like they're listened to and they're engaged. Something else that I've started trying to intentionally do is having an open foot posture. So if you're in a circle and you have your feet pointed in an open posture, that indicates that you are including everybody that's in the group and that more people are welcome into the group. Mm-hmm. So if you have things like turned like this, or if you're not facing the group, that indicates that the group is closed or that you're not interested in the conversation. Fascinating things, right? Yep. Now you're all like reflecting back on conversations. You're like, don't overanalyze.
And I was just gonna throw it out there. This is good for just talking to people in general. Right?
Yep. Next one, perhaps my favorite, is nodding and smiling. So we want to have an active body. So even a nod can go a long way to help people feel like you're on the same page. It's very comforting to me as a speaker. Whenever I look out and people are nodding, if people are looking at me with the blank, then I'm like, I don't know. But so nodding and smiling helps to give that affirmation. Mom.
I was thinking, by the way, that they were doing a fabulous job of actively listening. I was like, they're just doing all the stuff. They're smiling, they're making eye contact, they're making affirmative noises like, Yeah. Oh. Oh.
Do we want to talk about this story here? Let's talk about this story here. So, once I was taking, it's whenever I was homeschooled, I took a communications class, which meant that we got a communications book and went through the communications book. So, in this communication book, one of the activities that they had you do was go to somebody and ask them for directions, but then not do any active listening responses. So,
So no nods, no, oh, okay, nothing.
No,
right? Just,
okay, just nothing. So I went to Pastor Jeff, and I asked him for directions somewhere, like out the back side of church, like how to get to SRC or something like that. So I'm there, and he's talking to me, and we have this beautiful progression where he first gets louder, and then talks more, and then he literally ended by grabbing my arm and pulling me to the back of the youth room and like pointing out the window to explain to me, because if I wasn't giving any of the I understand, I'm listening signs, and so it was hysterical. It was the best moment of my career. But those affirming noises are really helpful for people to help them feel like they're being heard. Now the last one here has an asterisk as well, because so eye contact is very important, especially as you're listening. Mom, what are the percentages for roughly how much time we should be making eye contact while we're listening?
While you're listening, it's 70 to 90%.
70-90%. Now, I have an asterisk for two reasons. First of all, because if you are actually in the role of a small group facilitator, if you're the one who's asking the question, what you're trying to avoid is have it be, I ask a question, you answer, I ask another question, you answer me, I ask another question, and then you answer me. And so it's like I'm having a one-way conversation with each person in the group. We want it to be a group discussion. And so if you sense that that's happening, what you can do is make eye contact and then sort of transfer your gaze throughout the group, and that subconsciously encourages the person who's speaking to do the same thing, to look around the rest of the group. Now, the other thing with eye contact as a speaker is that the percentage is actually less if you're speaking, because if you've ever been with a person who is a little bit too intense and they're talking to you, and they're talking to you like this, and they just look you straight in the eyes, and you start to feel uncomfortable almost immediately. And you're like,
looking at me like that.
Well, there's percentages to back it up. Mom, what percentage of the time should we be looking at people when we're speaking?
50 to 70 is what we found online, but it's really closer to 50, I think.
Yeah, so.
And of course, in different cultures, it's different, but this is in the United States, our culture.
Yep. So in general, more eye contact is better than less. But again, with some asterisks.
Yeah.
There. Now, even though we're in the body language section, we are going to pause here to take a brief look at some of the other active listening techniques that we have on the other handout here. Again, it's not the PowerPoint one, but it's on the other piece of the summer.
It says Boston University at the top, maybe.
Depends on which.
Depends on which one you have.
Sorry.
Never mind, it says
So I
something
gave
else
them
at
the
top.
one that you wanted to get.
Good. I pulled from the bottom. It's basically the same.
It's the same thing. They just laid out differently. So, Mom, start us off. So what are these?
Maybe the first one's paraphrasing.
Oh, yours.
Listening.
So we've already talked about listening and how so whenever
right.
we're listening, we want to be participating in these body language things. We're gonna go through some of the other ones as well.
Yeah.
Mom.
Encouraging is a lot of that. Those yeah, where you're sort of nodding along, smiling, encouraging. Restating is basically you're just restating what they just said. Right?
So if I say, so I think that I want to be nicer to my husband.
So you're saying you want to be like nicer to Josh? I basically just restated what she said.
I might say something like, so it sounds like you want to be more kind or more loving. Yeah, so restating, oftentimes, like you say it just slightly differently so that they can, sort of, you're doing sort of an understanding check. To be like, okay, am I catching your drift here? What do you mean by nice?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Asking questions.
Oh, this is a good one.
Yeah.
What do you mean by?
Yeah, tell me a little more about that.
Now, we always want to be careful whenever we're, again, we're just thinking about the structure of the group time. And if somebody starts to share a situation and you're curious about like the surrounding circumstances of the situation, you're like, oh, well, what college was that? Oh, well, when did you go to school there? Oh my goodness. And then you sort of like go boom, off to the side. So whenever we do ask questions, we sort of want to stay on the heart of whatever's being discussed. But asking questions can be a really powerful tool.
Yeah. And then reflecting, which is more than restating. Reflecting is sort of getting a little more into the emotion. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you really feel like, I can't remember what you said Josh was going to do. It sounds like you really feel like you're not being quite as nice to Josh. Is that bothering you? Are you feeling sad about that?
Definitely, because he's so nice.
He's so nice.
Such a great.
And then summarizing, if you think about paraphrasing is just basically, which isn't on here, basically giving sort of the recap of everything they've told you. Summarizing is not just doing that recap, but sort of like, okay, so what I hear you saying is.
It's the one sentence encapsulation of
Correct.
The entire story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time somebody shares something, we want to be affirming what they've said, and even just saying, "Oh, thank you so much for sharing that." Thank you. Even if you're in the middle of one of those conversations where it's like flying and people are like, and sort of like bouncing in between each other. If somebody shared something that's a little bit more significant or a little bit longer, I always try to like lean out and say, and at least make eye contact and at least mouth. Like, okay, like I appreciate that you took the time to share that, even if we don't, take the full debrief for what they said because the group is functioning the way you want a group to, and they're sort of bouncing off of each other. Just letting people know that we appreciate what they've said, even if it doesn't get the full sort of debrief. Yeah. Sometimes it does.
Yeah.
Anything to add on before we move forward?
No.
Now, if you want to, for whatever reason, now this has two things on it. So both I'm not listening / I disagree. Sometimes you are going to want to indicate that you disagree. We're primarily not talking about this. We're trying to help avoid these body positions so that we can focus on the positive things of I am listening. So, Mom, first set.
Yeah, so leaning away, right, crossing your arms. Now listen, Steph Scholl and I, if you see us, we're always like, so listen, we're crossing our arms just because we're cold. It has nothing to do with, because some people just do have the cross arm resting thing, but then tapping.
Yeah, if you're.
I'm always tapping.
Yep. But so if you think about, so usually I'll tap if I'm anxious or if I'm bored, and so if you're thinking about the next thing or if you're not really engaged, sometimes, again, yes. Now with the crossing body parts, like I sit like this all the time, so I'm like, nope. Come on. And so these are, again, I think the primary thing of these three is leaning away instead of leaning towards. So if you lean towards somebody, that really helps to indicate that you're paying attention. But if you're leaning away and then you're doing this,
I'm gonna tell a quick story
Go
about
ahead.
Dad. Whenever he was giving some kind of meeting for the church thingy, and he was hoping there wouldn't be any questions. So he literally was up there like this, like his things were crossed, and he was like not really making eye contact. And I was like, I think he's doing that on purpose.
Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
Sure enough.
Did it work?
Yeah, it did.
There you go.
Sure enough.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I know. I guess.
To your advantage. Now these signs are especially ominous if they are paired with the shaking of the head, a still face, and or a furrowed brow. Mom, indicate furrowed brow for us. Yeah, so if
exactly.
you are making this is often I'm not sure I agree. What are you talking about, face? So if you see me making that face, you may have a theology correction coming your way. But if you have a perfectly still face when somebody's talking, yeah, you were like, it conveys that you're either not listening or that you really don't agree with what somebody's saying. And in our groups, we want to err on the side of generosity, listening, and encouragement. So
Absolutely.
Striving to avoid the still face and the furrowed brow.
Yeah, and then just like the, okay, yeah, right, yes. You hear it.
No. Yeah, if you hear growling, Broken eye contact, looking at notes. Now, again, I should have had an asterisk on broken eye contact because we don't want to stare people down whenever we're listening. But generally speaking, we do want to be giving people eye contact when they're talking. For group leaders especially, one of the reasons that we do ask people to look at the questions and pick which ones they think they're going to ask ahead of time is so that you don't have to pick your questions on the fly, because inevitably what ends up happening is somebody is answering the question and you are looking at the questions to decide which one you're going to answer, which one you're going to ask next. And our brains can only effectively do one of those tasks at a time. We cannot listen and think about what question we're going to ask next. Now, mom might argue, well, as a mom, I'm like, no, we can't do it. So generally speaking, we want to avoid trying to multitask and instead indicate we're listening actively. Mom.
I would say you can only multitask one mental thing at a time.
Yeah.
You can't. Like, I can totally fold laundry and watch a movie, and that's
Yes.
the only way I can watch a movie, because I'm like, this is such a waste of time. But you cannot think about what question you're going to ask and listen to the person actively. You can hear the person.
You might be able to like sort of scam it by like just catching a couple of words at the end and like make it seem like you were following the whole time, but we generally speaking want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Now, most of the time, these are things that we're actively seeking to avoid as we are in our small group. Occasionally, you may notice these things in somebody else, and that might be something to be like, oh, I wonder why. Like, that might be something to pursue. Other things that we want to take note of is looking for signs of discomfort or anxiety. So, Mom, what's the first one here? Again,
Leaning
cover.
back. Yep.
Yep. So, if people are leaning away, and you notice that's something
I talked about this.
you need to make a note of. Again, those crossing of the arms, legs, the feet pointed away. If your posture is avoidance, then probably they don't want to answer the question, or they feel uncomfortable with the topic that's being discussed. Next, playing with.
They're twirlers, right?
So if people are,
you're like, oh, you're nervous.
if their head is
It's okay.
down and they're just making like little circles on their page, their hair is covering their face, they're chewing on their hands. Like, these are all signs of either they don't want to answer or the topic is making them uncomfortable. And of course, the last one, avoiding eye contact. Now, y'all know that avoiding eye contact, if you're in my small group, will get you nowhere. So, but you also know that you can always say no. So if you're not looking at me and I call on you, you can always say no. Now, just because somebody has anxiety doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to be called on. Sometimes they do want to be called on, but they just feel nervous about sharing. So you've got a 50-50 shot. And if you notice these signs in somebody, you can either just sort of leave some extra space, or you might say, Jill, it looks like you're thinking about this. Do you have anything that you'd like to add? And Jill hopefully feels emboldened to either say yes or to say no. And so I would say that if you're noticing these signs, just proceed with caution. Proceed gently.
And I always like to, if those people do share, then to really affirm them after. Like, thank you so much for answering that.
Yep.
That's a great point. Unless it wasn't a great point, because I don't like to lie to people. But yeah.
So I'm going to advance the slide, but before we move into the next topic, we're going to do a little bit of role play. This is the active participation part. So you guys don't have to role play. We're going to role play. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to both, not at the same time, but so I'm going to be the talker first, and Mom's going to be the listener. And you're going to look at Mom's posture and consider what is she portraying? Is she portraying good, positive, active listening, or is she giving signs that she's not listening? And then we're going to switch and do the same thing but with roles reversed. You guys ready?
Yes. Let's play.
Okay, I'm gonna blind myself. question that I have decided to answer. So the other day, whenever I went to the store, there was this lady who was over off to the side, and she seemed just really discouraged. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna ask her how her day is. So I was like, hey, how's your day going? And she answered, and she was like, that's all I can think of.
Wow, that's an interesting story, Mariah. So you went up to her and she answered.
Yeah, and so,
Wow.
all right.
Yeah.
So, overall, what would you say? Actually, no, let's do this first. So, what did you notice about my mother's posture, about the noises that she made, etc.? What did you guys observe?
No, to you.
She was leaning forward.
Yep.
And she was
Nodding her head. Yep.
feet were open.
Making those affirmative noises.
She rephrased your story at
Yep.
the end.
Yep. And gave me a chance to then continue and build off of it. She's like, you're gonna go somewhere with this story? Anywhere? You're gonna finish this at some point? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
Okay, so I think I want to answer the question about someone who I don't want to forgive, but I have to forgive. I look at her because she looks so angry. So, I mean, my sister, whenever I was at my daughter's wedding, maybe it was my son's wedding, like they got there late and they missed the
Oh, wow.
they missed the beginning of the rehearsal.
Alright, that's
dinner.
All right. What did you guys notice about my posture?
Oh
Oh no! Yep, you're looking at your watch.
And she looked angry. I was almost
She
stopped
did
talking.
look a little angry.
She was like, I don't really want to be listening.
Like my face was flat.
Yeah.
Yep. So I wasn't nodding.
No, you were not.
Wasn't making any noise of affirmation. I had my body angled away from her.
Yeah. Something that we don't often think about, but that I've noticed more and more as I get older, is that we have an aura. You know, like whenever you're in a cranky mood, even if you say all the right things and try to do everything right, people like pick up on your
Underlying.
aura. That's the only thing that I can describe it as.
Yeah.
So watch your aura. I will oftentimes, like if something has happened terrible, which doesn't always happen, right? But if I come into a small group and I'm like, this is not a good day, I will say, look guys,
Just so you know.
it is not you. I'm just not having a happy time today. So forgive me. I love you all.
Yep. And I think, again, as we think about our body positioning and being in a small group especially, or if you're in a conversation with somebody and you especially want to communicate care, there might be something that's more natural for you that you just want to shift for the conversation to try to be more intentional. So for me, this is pretty comfy. Like this is comfortable for me. But if I want to communicate to somebody that I'm listening, then I'm gonna shift everything. I'm gonna turn my body. I'm gonna open up my posture, which this is not my normal position. Let me just tell you. I'm gonna lean forward and I'm gonna make that eye contact to help them to feel valued and that the conversation matters. Sometimes the active listening doesn't come naturally. It's not a natural position.
Correct. I'm reminded of Dr. Rick Rhodes.
Yep.
From Lancaster Bible College, he was just phenomenal.
He would stop what he was doing, like he would be taking attendance. He would stop. He would be, Mariah, how are you today? And I was like, too much eye contact. But he really made you feel like you were the only person in the room.
Yes. Yeah. He really did.
Yep. So,
all right.
I'm going to chair there.
Well done.
All right. So as we then move into just small group leader responsibilities, which some of you may or may not have, but just so you know, this is what we are looking for with our small group leaders. Just to sort of recap our overall goals for going into our small groups, we want to generate fruitful discussion and reflection that leads to meaningful application, and we want to share prayer requests. So whenever we send people off into our small groups, that's what we're hoping is going to happen. And we usually ask the groups to leave at least 10 to 15 minutes at the end for those requests. And of course, depending on the group, depending on how many people are there, depending on the needs.
Yes.
I know that there's some Tuesday night groups where 15 minutes was not enough, and we would end up like rescuing the children and then coming back and like half an hour later we're finally done sharing our prayer requests. And so we also always encourage people to answer the questions that make sense for our group. When Mom and I are doing the study in the morning and the evening, we'll often pick different questions because just the makeup of the groups is different, and you're like, okay, well, this question is going to more fit into the struggles versus the other group.
Again, we want to maintain confidentiality always.
Because confidentiality enables us to build that trust and to promote the safe sharing environment. We've talked about this before, but in our groups, we especially ask the group leaders to do this and to help other people not do this, is not to give unsolicited advice. Now, if somebody asks for advice, well, they asked for it. They asked for it. But I personally, both on a receiving end and on the observing when it has been given unsolicited, just observing end, it doesn't go well whenever people give advice and people aren't looking for it. It makes them feel like you didn't value what I said. Oftentimes they'll feel trampled and run over. Oftentimes there's just something inside of us that's just like, we just sort of like our hackles rise up for whatever reason, you know, we're just not ready for it in that moment. And so in our small group, most of the time, if somebody's sharing us an experience or a story, even if your experience, like, you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened to me. We don't want to try to solve other people's scenarios. And so there may come a moment where you might say, oh, you know what, something really similar happened to me, and you don't want to one up their experience, but there is an opportunity in sharing for you to be like, you know what, that reminded me, I'm so sorry for this, that reminded me of, and there's a balance to be had there.
There's a balance. But you mentioned this, but you want to make sure that like everybody in the group doesn't then share their whatever, and then it's sort of like ganging up on them. No dog piles.
Yeah, and especially if I think I've seen this happen more with either people sharing something where, like, it was, they mentioned, so they're describing a scenario, and in the scenario it comes to light that the person is doing something wrong, and they're not necessarily talking about that struggle, but they have inadvertently revealed it in the course of their conversation, and then all of a sudden there's a shark in the group who's like, ooh, I have detected incorrect lifestyle behavior, and then they come swimming in for the kill, right? And then the rest of the group is like, oh yeah, that is wrong, and then they start sort of piling on and sort of saying, okay, well, you really shouldn't. And that's an experience that will 100% drive somebody out of a group. People, that's just not a cool experience to have. Even if you're accurately pointing out that somebody's lifestyle decision or whatever is wrong, first of all, many people usually already know, and so we don't need to play the Holy Spirit. But secondly, and this is where sort of being aware of who else is in your group is helpful, because if everybody else in your group is a mature Christian and you're like, I'm not worried that the rest of the group is going to be like deceived that like murdering their husband, you know, or whatever. Like that's an extreme example, but like if there's a scenario they're talking about it, like nobody else in the group is going to be like, is that okay? Like if they're not going to be confused, then you don't need to take that moment in front of the entire group to embarrass that person and call them out, when it would be far better to help to encourage that person and to help them grow and allow the Spirit to come alongside them. Perhaps even you'll have an opportunity in a more private discussion, or maybe they'll bring it up themselves and they're like, you know what, I've realized now, is this wrong? And then you can have the conversation about it. But 100% of the time, it's so much better if it's the individual who's talking about it brings it up, rather than if you're like, look, you sinner. Look, sinner. Now, what I will say is that if somebody is talking about theology and they say something that is theologically incorrect,
like Jesus isn't the only way to get to heaven. You could also just do all the sacraments in the Catholic Church, and that also gets you there.
You know what? That's a really interesting idea. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share about how the Bible handles this issue? And so spreading it out can be a helpful way to redirect. Some of my most gymnastic moments in Bible study have been whenever somebody has said something that's just totally off in left field, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to shut them down so hard that they're like, well, that was awful, I never want to come back. But again, you do want to, especially if there are other people who you're like, oh, I'm not completely sure where these people are, you do want to correct bad theology. And so, gently, but we do want to bring people back to the right path. Encourage thought development rather than bluntly correct answers. So if things get off track.
Yeah, and I really like the what you put down there, Mariah, right? Be grateful for every answer, because I think that's probably, as I sit in small groups and I'm helping people grow, the mistake that I see the most often, where you might give an answer and they're like, anyone else?
And you're like,
which tells the person whatever, or just to, and then look around. So if you don't get that feedback. And even if you don't know what to say, I always say, thank you for sharing that. Or that's a good point. Well, that's not a good point. Or that's interesting, thank you. Anyone else have I always try to acknowledge every single answer, because otherwise people, even if I can't think of a way to build on that answer, which is usually my struggle, just to at least acknowledge the answer.
And sometimes in the course of a small group discussion, like my favorite small group discussions is where you're not really actually in charge of the discussion anymore, and people are just bouncing off of each other. Even then, I like to, if somebody else has already bounced off and they've started, I'll still look over and say thank you, and I'll at least make eye contact and say thank you for sharing. Just to try to help make sure that people know that I valued their response, even though, so the discussion's going great. I'm at that point not facilitating the discussion. It's doing my favorite thing. They're running themselves. But we still want to offer that gratitude.
And I think we can help each other out too. Like if you're just a participant in a small group, if you really like what somebody said, sit by saying, good point, I agree, or
yep, that's it.
Like a good steak.
With blue cheese and mushrooms and grapes. Anyway.
Grapes.
Yeah. You made it like that.
See?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe you.
She doesn't believe me. So,
if things get off track.
And they will. Your response should vary depending on the situation.
Right. So if it's a total and complete rabbit trail, they are not even on the right chapter in the Bible, woo, okay, I don't know where you're going with that. Sort of like hey, that's an interesting point, but let's bring it back. The question that we're trying to figure out here is fill in the blank.
And there may be some people who
habitually
are just off on their own. They're just doing their own thing. And again, the more you get to know people, the more you get to know if something really gentle and subtle will work. Because there are some people who you kind of know. They're like, oh yeah, I'm so easily distracted, and you just sort of need to look at them and start to open your mouth, and they're like, oh, I got it. Sorry, I'll stop. And there are other people that you need to take the proverbial baseball bat and say, okay, we're gonna talk about this. And so usually we are somewhere in the middle, but you may need the proverbial baseball bat in your back pocket. So if somebody has been talking for a really long time, now this is hard because sometimes people just have a scenario and they just need to talk through it, and we want to honor that. But it is a group sharing time, not an individual therapy session. So we want to just be, as especially group facilitators, be aware that, especially if you notice people starting to do the I'm not listening signs, where they're shifting, they're starting to lean away, they're looking at you anxiously, and you're like, okay, other people are feeling that this person has talked for 10 minutes and we need to, their time for talking needs to come to an end. And so you may say something like, hey, you know what, thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to give you another minute. I if somebody's clearly not done yet, but I'm you need to be. And I may say, would you be able to wrap that up within like the next minute so that we can then shift and give other people an opportunity to share as well. We appreciate so much your insights though.
Yeah, good. And then if they give a completely wrong answer, or if they start down a demeaning, like demeaning other people, or that where they're gonna tell someone this is how you should be living, that's a place where it really let me pause you there should
With
come
the
in.
hand, yeah.
Because you don't want someone to go, 10 minutes down the you don't really need Jesus to be saved track, because then you're just wasting time.
Or, and I have had it happen occasionally where somebody, I'm sure from a good place in their heart, but started to really beat somebody up in the midst of the group, and I don't want that to happen. And so for me, it is, I would rather offend the person who is feeling mature enough to correct somebody else rather than for the person who is new, who is fragile, and I'm like, I want both people to come back, but I'm more confident that the mature person who feels pretty good about their spiritual lifestyle, I think you can handle me stopping you. I'm not sure that this person can handle getting dogpiled. So I would rather immediately a little bit more, like that's the most forward that I'll be in a conversation is whenever I see those things happening. So.
And similarly, if someone tries to answer the question for somebody else, like,
they're playing the Holy Spirit.
Isn't there somebody in your life that you've been struggling to forgive? To sort of like, okay, that's a great example of how so-and-so, Bev, Beth, Barney, whoever, can apply it to their lives. How can you apply this question to your life?
Yeah. And that is something we're going to be a little bit more aggressive with.
Right, because you're not the Holy Spirit for anyone else in the group.
Yep.
Or yourself.
As tempting as it is. Yep.
But you do need to respond to the Spirit. So
now, if somebody wants to share a story that's kind of related but doesn't focus on the application, and again, this is probably our biggest struggle. Perhaps because we all have great stories, right? And we love to, especially perhaps as women, we like to share about our lives. And this is the forum where we're getting to know other women. So the temptation to answer every question with a story is high, and especially if it's like, so again, let's go back to the witnessing thing. So if you had a really cool witnessing story and you haven't gotten to tell anybody about it, and you're like, well, I know that this is a forward-looking question, but I really want to share this cool witnessing story that I just had, that's a temptation. And as a participant, sometimes I'll actually say, you know what, guys, I just thought of a story that I really want to tell, but it's not related to the question. Somebody remind me to tell me after we're done. And I'm like, I really want to share this story, man. But like recognizing for myself that this isn't the time. And so if I'm in that spot, just like with the cheesecake, I might say, that's not really answering the question. That's not really on topic. Why don't we go ahead and save it for after the discussion? I really want to hear this story, but it's just not quite where we are right here in the discussion.
Yep. And then also, if someone hasn't left room for reflection. So let's say that I've just shared that I've really been struggling with alcohol addiction lately, and it's just something it's just something that I've been burdened with, and I'm really trying to get some help. And then Mariah says, yeah, you know what, right after I stop talking, yeah, you know what, I've been struggling with food addiction too, and I don't know what to do. I mean, do you guys know of any places? She's just not only stolen my pool, but paved it with concrete. Yep. So we need to make sure that we are leaving room for reflection, especially on those harder things.
Yeah. So you might say something like, you know what, and Mariah, I definitely we want to take some time for your question as well, but I think that I want to just leave some room to pause. Like that was a pretty significant and vulnerable thing that my mom just shared. So I let that, Kelly, that seemed like a pretty significant situation, and sort of invite them to re-engage, because that's been like that was a big thing that they just unloaded. And so being a group leader sometimes I think is harder than teaching, because teaching, you just get to stand up and deliver the content and then you're done. I'm like, and you want to be responsive to what the group is doing, but for the most part it's just I talk and you listen, haha. But whenever you're facilitating a small group, you're really balancing all of the things. You're trying to help people answer questions, giving people equal room on the floor, but also taking into consideration that sometimes a person just needs that extra love and attention. And again, we don't want it to become, okay, well, this is Mariah's weekly therapy session. Here we go, because that's not what our time is aimed for. But occasionally, you might just be really having a rough night, and we want to provide that flexibility for somebody to walk in, and if they start bawling in the middle of small group, that's probably a good time to pull out the Kleenex and say, okay, how can we come alongside you in this time? And just being willing to be flexible, moving the prayer time up. You're like, let's pray right now. Great things to be had. Overall, again, I have found personally, so obviously studying the Word is always fruitful, and the Lord always brings new things to light whenever I'm just studying the Word on my own. But whenever we get into those small groups, there's just something powerful that happens where I'm challenged. There's that opportunity for that accountability, both in like, okay, well, did you do that thing? But also in that positive sense of encouragement and cheering one another on and praying for one another. And I personally, I love doing small groups, love being part of the small groups. So, yay, small groups. I think that's all. That's all that we have. Credit to SlidesGo. Once again, so if you missed the design and presentation talk, I'm not completely sure what Lauren covered, but I do like using SlidesGo as a free PowerPoint template that you can access online, and you don't have to use as much of your brain to create PowerPoints. All right, that's all. Really just stole it. Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Yay.